Today, I'm talking to an insanely talented, multi-platinum producer who recently produced Gunna's hit song, Fuck You Mean. In this video, he's gonna go over how he's gotten his major placements with artists like Roddy Ricch, Gunna, NBA Youngboy, Lil Wayne, Young Dolph, and more. And he's also gonna break down the sample to one of his biggest songs with Gunna and Roddy Ricch.
I felt like I was kind of at that point in my life, you know what I mean? I was just like, I'm gonna just decide like where I'm gonna be. Trey called me like a week before the album. He was like, he called me, he was just like, check Gunna's story. But it just so happened that like, as soon as I got there, you know, there's a Rolls Royce pulling up and it's Gunna in turbo.
That's fucking crazy. All right, we're here with the GOAT, Dunk Rock.
What's up?
So how did you actually get into making beats? I know that you started, you said in like 2010 or something like that.
I grew up in a very musical household. My dad played guitar. My mom, you know, loved music, my whole family. So I was like a huge Kanye fan and I was just curious about, you know, how does this work? So I first started making beats on like GarageBand, 2010. Yeah, it's kind of how I got my start.
How long did it take you from there to actually get good at making beats?
And it was a weird process. I mean, like I was making beats on GarageBand. They were bad. Like I didn't even know how to quantize like a beat. Like when I first started, it was like that type of shit. Like it was just so weird. When I got into college, basically someone gave me a reason to use it. I didn't even know like what any other programs were. And I would say it took me like probably like a good 5 years, maybe like 2015. Like I felt like my beats started to get like pretty good, like Sluger rip-off beats. You know what I mean?
During that time period when you were kind of coming up, did you have a job or have you just always been doing music full time?
So I went to college. I went to college for economics and I graduated, got into like sales, which I just wasn't for me at all. But I was always making beats, you know what I mean? And then like 2017, I'd been at that job a couple years and was just making beats like, you know, as soon as I would get home and, you know, on my lunch break and stuff like that. And I was just like, I can't do this. I can't like wake up 10 years from now and be working, you know, in sales. I just quit summer 2017, moved out to LA. I still had a job when I moved out to LA. I started to work at a hotel and was just doing that and going to sessions whenever I could type shit. I didn't start doing music full time until 2020. That's because when I signed my first publishing deal.
When was the first moment that you made money off of your music?
It was like pretty much all 2020 because that's when I first started to get my placements. I got my very first major placement end of 2019. Me and producer Ism did a song for Danny Lay. I had a song on the Dreamville album. I started to get like the upfront advances and stuff. So that was the first time I actually saw like, you know, real money.
So how did your first major placement come about, the one with Danny Lay?
Shout out to Ism, like he was one of the first producers to kind of like give me a chance to use my loops and stuff. And I was just sending him stuff, you know what I mean? He's done a bunch of huge records, Chris Brown, French Montana, a bunch of big people. And I was just sending him loops and he just texted me one day. He's like a snippet of the Danny Lay song. Yeah, that was my first joint. It was like on her EP she put out like end of the year. It's 4 songs. I was super hyped, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that shit was crazy. So have you always known that you were gonna make it big with music?
I would say no. I mean, my goal was always just to be able to just wake up every day and make beats, you know what I mean? And not have to worry about anything else and make music. So past 3 years, I've been able to do that, which is like a huge blessing.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's the dream. So kind of going off of the last thing I said, I saw in an old post on your Instagram that you had written a letter to yourself on how your life would go out, like you detailed it out. What did that letter kind of like lay out?
I got that idea from an interview. It was a Rap Radar interview with Sycamore, and so he just did this really great interview on Rap Radar. He was just like, you know what, like no, like I'm gonna decide the way my life is gonna go. I'm gonna write it out and I'm just gonna go do it. I felt like I was kind of at that point in my life, you know what I mean? I was just like, I'm gonna just decide like where I'm gonna be. So like I just wrote it out, and it was basically like interesting because I carried it in my wallet. I still have it all the time. It was like, I'm gonna be traveling, you know, around the world, Grammy award-winning, multi-platinum producer, like type shit, living the life I want to live, like happy, like fulfilled. It's crazy to kind of like, you know, hit a couple of those, which is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. So do you like believe in the manifestation thing, like the power of kind of like believing it into existence, that whole principle? Do you believe in that?
100%. I really feel like I've tried to incorporate that into my life as much as possible. I really feel like when you can have a vision for your life, do your best to visualize that every day. Just 5 minutes just for you to like visualize like where you see yourself, like picture like in the studio with those artists, like in that house you want, like, you know what I mean, with the plaques, whatever it is. You're gonna subconsciously like start making these moves and find yourself in these positions to actually like make that happen.
I really love that whole letter thing. When I saw that, I was like, it's like something out of a movie, like you wrote a letter to yourself and then it all came true. It's safe to say that now you're definitely working with big artists, you're multi-platinum. But one of my favorite songs that you've done, other than Fuck You Mean, of course, is Cooler Than a Bitch with Gunna and Roddy Ricch. Would you be down to break that one down?
Of course, let's do it.
Pull up to the Maybach in the driveway.
So I produced that. First of all, I produced that with Trey Pounds, who's an amazing producer with 808 Mafia. I sent him this guitar loop. I just gotta give him like a huge shout out before we do this, because he was, again, one of the first producers to even give me a chance to send him loops. He's got one of like the craziest discographies. Like, he's one of the most underrated producers in the game, and also one of the coolest people. So I sent him a guitar loop. It's really 2 chords. This is just a guitar like basically recorded raw. That's the first chord, and then I did it on this cheap ass guitar. It was like $70. So back when I was doing guitar loops at this time, I was actually doing something kind of crazy. I was literally like chopping all of the notes up individually and then like sampling them.
That's crazy.
Looking back on it, why I ever would do that makes no sense. I don't know, but in this case it worked. You can see here there's this like MIDI, right? This is me chopping the guitar, just basically like replaying it. It's very similar. It's like smoother actually, so I could cut up the chords, right? That's the whole loop, really. And then after that, all it is just putting some processing on it. The effects on the guitar, it's just really reverb. This thing called Audiomatic, which is Reason's version of like RC20. Pulverizer, I don't really know why I use this. I don't really use this anymore, but I think it was probably just to give it like a little bit of like a dirtier feel. I actually did use halftime on this as well. Yeah, just like a tiny bit.
It's like, it's subtle, but it's like beneath it. Yeah.
Yeah, it gave it just like a little more like, almost like there was like another guitar playing in the background. Like, just like almost like an echo, like a slight delay echo. That's really the whole loop. Yeah, that's it. He killed the drums on that shit, and Gunna, you know, did what Gunna does, which is make hits. And Roddy too.
That's fucking crazy. So just a couple questions about like just like the actual music process. When you open up a project, are you like, I'm going in and I'm gonna like make this style thing for this person, or are you just kind of like freestyling it and just do whatever comes to you when you start making stuff?
I just want to make stuff that I like, you know what I mean? And then I've always felt like when I make stuff that I like, it ends up resonating with the people that I feel like it might go for.
What are some fire go-to VSTs that you use in your music now?
I use like analog wind and brass, the analog strings. Definitely heavy on, what's it just called now? Just Analog Lab, right?
Yeah, Analog Lab.
Analog Lab. Yeah, Analog Lab. I just like how they have so many sounds all in one. Yeah, I would say those are like kind of like my go-tos. What I've been doing lately a lot too is just messing with one-shots, like taking the end of a string or the end of a flute, putting it into like a sampler and making like a new chord with it, or chopping it or something like that. I've been doing that a lot too.
When you made the loop for this song, did you know it was special, or were you just like cranking loops out and this was just another one that you made?
I remember thinking like, I like the bounce on it for sure. I was like, okay, this is dope. Definitely didn't, you know, pin this one as like, oh, it's gonna go crazy.
What kind of loops do you see typically getting used the most?
One thing I've noticed, especially being in the studio, when someone pulls up a guitar loop, it just seems like that shit is getting used. It doesn't have to be super crazy. It can be simple. Maybe it's more in sessions with artists because it's also easier to write to. But I just always noticed that guitar loops get picked up. It's just like they're very versatile.
Like, I'm not a songwriter, but yeah, like I like write vocal samples and shit like that. But yeah, like guitar shit is just like, I don't know, it feels easier to write on that, or like acoustic piano.
I was gonna say, yeah, like really like the staples of like music are like guitar and piano. People just gravitate towards those because the chords just sound so good coming out of them, you know what I mean?
Real quick, before Dunk Rock gets into some real sauce on how you can get major placements, if you've enjoyed this video so far, hit that subscribe button so I can keep making videos like this for you guys. Once you had that loop done, how did that actually get placed with Roddy and Gunna?
Honestly, I was just sending beats to Trey Pounds, you know, just flooding them. Once I kind of like, I got the okay from him to just, you know, keep sending. I just keep sending every week.
And then how did you actually get in contact with Trey Pounds?
I met Trey actually at an event in Atlanta in 2017. It was like called Beast of the Beats. And so they had Trey Pounds, Fuse from 808 Mafia, and they just had like 808 Mafia panel. They were just really cool. They were talking to all the producers and they were like, yo, we need you guys to send us loops. And I just introduced myself and said, hey, you know, I'd like to send you some stuff. I got your email. I just kept following up with him until one time he was just like, who are you who's sending me loops? And I'm just like, oh, we met at the, you know, Atlanta event. He's just like, okay, bet. And so yeah, that was it.
So do you recommend going to those like producer events and shit like that to meet people?
Anytime you can get in the room with anyone to meet them face to face is totally worth it. You know, even if you have to pay to like go to some of these events, like you never know, especially because they're usually like in LA or they're in Atlanta and they're probably at a nice studio. You're just gonna meet people who you probably didn't even think you'd meet. You can have a huge producer just walk in the door because they're in the next room type shit.
What was it like whenever you first heard Gunna and Roddy on that song?
Oh, it was fire. Like Trey called called me like a week before the album. He was like, he called me, he was just like, check Gunna's story. He was just like, Roddy's on the song. And then Gunna was like playing it in his like Wraith or something. And I was like, damn. It was just super dope. Like two of like definitely my favorite artists. I couldn't really believe they were like on the same song. So
yeah, that's crazy. On a guitar loop too. That's fucking
yeah.
From my understanding, at least, that beat actually indirectly gave you now your biggest song with Gunna, Fuck You Mean. And you had kind of like a viral moment where you were out with the sign to get Gunna's attention, saying that you produced on Wanna. What made you think to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just in general, I've kind of always been a person who's not afraid to like go out and just make something happen. Like the Wanna album came out May of 2020, so this is like mid-pandemic. I'd gotten some placements before, but this is like my first like kind of like big placement, right? And I just felt like the world was shut down, and I was just like, damn, like I want to work. And I just kind of knew where their studio was from, you know, hearing around. I was literally just hoping that maybe an engineer would see me, or Lil Got It like might see me or something and be like, oh shit, you produced that song? Like come inside, like let's work. But it just so happened that like as soon as I got there, you know, there's a Rolls Royce pulling up and it's Gunna and Turbo.
That's fucking crazy. Obviously I saw it once the whole Fuck You Mean thing happened, but did it go viral before that?
It had like a mini viral moment in like 2020, and then it resurfaced again because he actually DM'd a fan page. Like there's a fan page called Gunna Fandom, and he told them to post that I had produced that song, and now I produced Fuck You Mean to like show like the come up.
What? So Gunna?
Yeah. He showed me like the fan page, like DM'd me. He was just like, you know, Gunna said to do this, so that's why we're doing this.
You have like these crazy ass moments. You write down how your life's gonna go. Fucking bro, that's fucking nuts. So if you had to start from zero today, you didn't have any placements, lost all your followers and connections, what would be your step-by-step game plan to like get your first major placement?
Honestly, I'm a big believer in moving to like the cities where music is happening. So I really think that being out in LA or Atlanta, Miami too, is going to accelerate where you're going. So what I would do is just go all in. I know it can be scary, but like honestly, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. Like I just feel like being out where things are happening gives you the best chance of an accelerated like path towards it.
When you moved to LA, how did you go about networking?
I would say the thing that's cool about LA is like you can just meet people from being at like events. Like I would just, you know, just meet people, just like go out. I would just, you know, say hello, introduce myself to people. I'm a producer, you know what I mean? Let's link up type shit. You find more people through them.
Do you think you need to move to a big city to make it major in music?
I don't think it's 100% necessary, but you know, when you're out here, you realize most of the people are out here, like the biggest producers, like they're out here for a reason. They're in Atlanta, they're traveling because this is where like the opportunities are.
So what's, if you can say it, what's your craziest like in studio story, if you have one?
Just recently, like Sony had put together like some sessions, and you were there too around the same time.
Yep.
I was in one room like working on something with NLE, and then Rob 49 comes in like another room, and he was just like, okay, you got beats, like boom, started playing stuff for like Rob. I would say that was just like really cool, and they were both like also like really super chill, just like cool dudes also. But that was dope.
Have most of your placements come through just like emailing stuff, or have they came from like actually meeting people in the room in the studio?
Most of my stuff has come from me sending guitar loops, but like I said, like the people who I got my first placements with, I actually met in person before I got those placements with them. You know what I mean? Like I met Trey in Atlanta, I met Ism in LA. Those were my first people I got major placements with. The in-person is becoming more valuable. So like that's like what can be what separates you. Like everyone has an Instagram. Like what's gonna separate you? The fact that you pulled up to LA from taking a 16-hour flight from like Europe just to go meet that producer that you want to, you know, work with. You know what I mean?
All right, so now that you kind of like been in the studio working with artists, do you like cooking up in the studio with artists better, or do you like cooking up just by yourself in your own environment better?
With like rappers, it's like there's no really time to be like cooking up. Like, you know how it is, session starts at 8, rapper doesn't show up till 1. First 2 hours is a party, and then like 4 or 5 a.m, you know, everyone falls asleep, and then they're like, who needs, like, I need some beats. You're ready to go with the beats. Like that's how it goes.
What are some like big mistakes you see producers making, whether it's like doing online stuff or like actual in-person in the studio stuff that they're doing that's shooting themselves in the foot?
This is like a little more overall for that, but like just in general, have you ever seen that photo of Michael Phelps in the Olympics and he's swimming and the guy next to him, he's in one lane and the guy next to him is looking at him? The mistake that people make is they focus on winning, right? It makes sense, like logically, like in order to win I need to focus on winning, but the guy who was looking at Michael Phelps, he's behind him, he's looking at him, he's focused on the result. Because he's focused on the end result, he's wondering where he is in the race. Michael Phelps always won because he was focused on exactly what he was doing in the moment, and by the time he looked up, he had won every single time. I think the most valuable thing that anyone can do is literally just focus on yourself, compare yourself only to yourself, and by the time you look up after 3 or 4 years, shit, you're gonna be a lot farther than you were than if you were looking around to see what everyone else was doing.
It's almost like that one quote. It's like comparison is the thief of joy. You only be having fun, which is the whole reason you want to do it in the first place, right? So
yeah, exactly.
if you want to learn how Lil Baby's producer gets major placements and hear a crazy story that I've never heard anything like, click this video right here.